Corruption has been one of the most persistent and destructive forces in Africa's political history, a shadow that has loomed over nations since independence and continues to shape their destinies today. Across the continent, countless leaders have risen to power promising transformation, only to betray their people by siphoning national wealth for personal gain. Nigeria's Sani Abacha, for instance, looted an estimated $5 billion in just 5 years, hiding the money in foreign accounts while his nation battled poverty. In Angola, José Eduardo dos Santos turned oil wealth into a family empire, and Equatorial Guinea's Teodoro Obiangwema built a dynasty amid widespread poverty despite vast natural resources. Omar Bongo ruled Gabon for over 4 decades, enriching his clan through oil revenues, and even Egypt's Hosni Mubarak amassed billions while his people struggled. Yet, none of these notorious figures come close to the scale and audacity of the man we shall discuss in this video. Ruling from 1965 to 1997, he transformed one of Africa's richest nations into a personal empire, plundering an estimated $10 to $15 billion from the treasury, while the country's infrastructure, healthcare, and education collapsed. He built palaces in the jungle, flew the Concorde for shopping trips, and treated the country's treasury as his personal ATM. His kleptocracy was so vast and systematic that corruption itself became a pillar of governance, shaping every aspect of public life. His reign remains the ultimate symbol of Africa's post-colonial betrayal, a cautionary tale of how absolute power and unchecked greed can cripple even the wealthiest of nations. He was not only corrupt, he elevated corruption into an art form, leaving behind a broken country and a legacy that continues to haunt his country till date. This is the story of the man who ruled for 32 years and is considered by many as the most corrupt man in African history. This is the story of Mobutu Sese Seko, the man who single-handedly stole close to $15 billion from Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, and left the country in shambles. Mobutu Sese Seko, born Joseph Désiré Mobutu on October 14, 1930, in the small village of Lizala in the Belgian Congo, now DRC, would go on to become one of Africa's most infamous rulers. His life before the presidency is a tale of ambition, adaptability, and ruthless cunning. A journey from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of power in a newly independent nation. Mobutu was born into the Nbandi ethnic group, a minority community in the northwestern part of the Congo along the Congo River. His father, Gbemani, was a cook for a Belgian judge, and his mother, Marie-Madeleine Yemo, was a hard-working woman who later became a hotel maid. Mobutu's father died when he was still a child, and his mother remarried. He was raised by his uncle and grandparents for much of his early life. This modest background exposed Mobutu to the harsh realities of colonial society, where Africans were treated as second-class citizens in their own land. From an early age, he was noted for his intelligence, curiosity, and rebellious spirit. Mobutu's education began at a Catholic mission school run by Belgian priests, one of the few options available for Congolese children under colonial rule. He was a bright student, excelling in languages, mathematics, and literature, and was known for questioning authority, a trait that often got him into trouble. His strong personality and leadership qualities emerged during his school years, where he led student protests and challenged the rigid discipline of the mission schools. However, he also developed a deep appreciation for European culture and administration, which would later influence his governance style. At age 19, in 1949, Mobutu enlisted in the Force Publique, the colonial army of the Belgian Congo. This move was pivotal in shaping his character and future ambitions. The Force Publique was notorious for its harsh discipline and racial hierarchy, with Belgian officers commanding African troops. Mobutu served for 7 years, rising to the rank of Sergeant Major one of the highest positions available to Africans at the time. During his military service, he traveled extensively across the vast colony and learned several languages, including French, Lingala, and Swahili. These experiences gave him valuable insights into the Congo's ethnic diversity, geography, and social fabric. It was also during this period that Mobutu developed a taste for authority, order, and loyalty, qualities he admired in the military and would later infuse into his political rule. However, despite his progress, Mobutu became disillusioned with the limited opportunities for Africans in the colonial army. In 1956, he left the Force Publique and turned his attention to journalism, a field that offered both influence and visibility. Mobutu began writing for L'Avenir, a prominent Congolese newspaper. His articulate writing style and strong political opinions quickly earned him a reputation as an emerging intellectual voice among the Congolese elite. Through journalism, he gained access to political circles and became familiar with the emerging nationalist movements that were demanding independence from Belgium. Mobutu developed contacts with key Congolese leaders, most notably Patrice Lumumba, the charismatic founder of the Mouvement National Congolais, MNC. Lumumba saw potential in the young, ambitious Mobutu and took him under his wing, bringing him into the party as a political aide and advisor. By the late 1950s, the winds of change were sweeping across Africa. Across the continent, colonial empires were crumbling and nationalist movements were rising. The Congo was no exception. The Belgians, however, were unprepared for the rapid pace of political awakening and announced in 1959 that the Congo would gain independence by June 30, 1960. This sudden decision triggered a chaotic rush for power among various political factions. Mobutu, positioned within Lumumba's MNC, became a key liaison between the party and the Belgian administration due to his military background and fluency in French. As independence approached, Mobutu's role grew in importance. He served as Lumumba's secretary and informal intelligence advisor, helping to organize the party and manage contacts with both Belgian officials and Western diplomats. His dual experience in the army and the press made him an invaluable asset, bridging the gap between nationalist fervor and pragmatic politics. He was also building a network of allies in the army and the civil service, connections that would later prove crucial. On June 30th, 1960, the Congo gained independence, becoming the Republic of the Congo, later renamed Zaire in 1971. Joseph Kasavubu became the country's first president, and Patrice Lumumba was appointed prime minister. Mobutu was appointed Secretary of State to the presidency and served as Lumumba's chief military advisor. However, the joy of independence quickly descended into chaos. Within days, the Force Publique mutinied, Belgian troops intervened, and the mineral-rich province of Katanga, backed by Belgian mining interests, declared secession. The new government was overwhelmed by crisis. The Congo crisis spiraled into a geopolitical battleground. Lumumba turned to the Soviet Union for support after being rebuffed by the United Nations, alarming the United States and Belgium, who feared the spread of communism in Central Africa during the Cold War. Western powers, particularly the CIA and Belgian intelligence, began plotting against Lumumba, seeking a more reliable figure to protect their interests. Mobutu, pragmatic and ambitious, became their man of choice. On September 14, 1960, with covert support from the United States and Belgium, Mobutu staged his first coup, seizing control of the army and neutralizing the civilian government. He placed Lumumba under house arrest, later handing him over to rival authorities in Katanga, where Lumumba was executed in January 1961, an event that shocked the world and sealed Mobutu's reputation as a master of ruthless political maneuvering. After the coup, Mobutu did not immediately seize the presidency. Instead, he positioned himself as the kingmaker behind the scenes. He retained control over the army, the most powerful institution in the country, while civilian government struggled with legitimacy and factionalism. Over the next 5 years, Congo remained unstable, with rebellions, assassinations, and foreign interventions. Mobutu, however, steadily consolidated power, expanding his influence over the military and cultivating Western backing as a staunch anti-communist. By 1965, political paralysis had reached a breaking point. President Joseph Kasavubu dismissed Prime Minister Moise Tshombe, leading to a constitutional crisis. Seizing the opportunity, Mobutu launched his second and decisive coup on November 24, 1965, dissolving parliament, suspending the constitution, and declaring himself head of state. At just 35 years old, Joseph Désiré Mobutu became the second president of the Republic of the Congo, setting the stage for a 32-year dictatorship that would redefine the country's history. Mobutu's rise from a humble village boy to the most powerful man in the Congo was the result of relentless ambition, strategic alliances, and opportunistic timing. He had transformed himself from a colonial soldier to a journalist, from a nationalist aide to a CIA-backed power broker. His mastery of manipulation of both people and events allowed him to exploit the Congo's political chaos and Cold War geopolitics to his advantage. By the time he seized power in 1965, Mobutu had already demonstrated the qualities that would define his rule: political cunning, ruthlessness, charisma, and a deep understanding of the machinery of power. What followed would be one of the most infamous dictatorships in African history. But the seeds of Mobutu Sese Seko's reign were sown long before he donned the leopard skin cap of a president. Mobutu Sese Seko's 3-decade rule over Zaire stands as one of the most staggering examples of state plunder in modern history. His kleptocracy was so vast and deeply entrenched that Mobutism became a synonym for corruption itself. While many African leaders enriched themselves at the expense of their people, Mobutu elevated theft into a political system, one that bled one of Africa's richest nations into poverty while building one man's empire of unimaginable luxury. When Mobutu seized power in 1965, Zaire was brimming with potential. Rich in copper, cobalt, diamonds, gold, and uranium, it was among Africa's most resource-rich nations. Instead of using this wealth to develop infrastructure, healthcare, or education, Mobutu turned the state into a personal ATM. His regime was based on the principle that everything belongs to the president. Ministers, military generals, and civil servants followed his example, institutionalizing corruption at every level of government. Mobutu is believed to have stolen between $10 billion and $15 billion, a colossal amount, especially considering Zaire's annual GDP often hovered around $5 billion. To put this in perspective, the country's foreign debt in the 1990s was approximately $14 billion, meaning Mobutu's personal wealth nearly equaled the nation's total debt. This staggering theft was achieved through several deliberate strategies. First, Mobutu directly looted state coffers. The treasury became indistinguishable from his personal bank account. Revenue from mining companies and nationalized industries flowed not into development projects, but into his private accounts in Swiss and Belgian banks. He would order the central bank to issue checks in his name without explanation. Foreign aid, billions from the United States, Belgium, and the World Bank, was siphoned off before it ever reached its intended purpose. Second, Mobutu perfected the art of patronage. He handed lucrative government contracts and state monopolies to loyalists and family members, who in turn funneled kickbacks to him. Government positions were sold or awarded not on merit, but on loyalty and bribery. This created a vast pyramid of corruption where every official stole from the level below, and everyone ultimately paid homage to Mobutu. At the top, the phrase "Débrouillez-vous," fend for yourself, became the unofficial motto of the Zairean civil service, reflecting a system where theft was not only tolerated but necessary for survival. Third, Mobutu plundered Zaire's natural resources through shell companies and state-run enterprises. The state-owned mining giant, Gécamines, was stripped of its profits, with revenues diverted to Mobutu's offshore accounts. Diamonds and cobalt, two of Zaire's most valuable exports, were sold secretly by companies linked to his family. He also demanded hefty cuts from foreign corporations seeking access to Zaire's mineral wealth. While the Congolese people suffered economic collapse, Mobutu lived like a monarch. His lifestyle was legendary for its excess. He built lavish palaces, including the sprawling Bardo Light presidential compound in his home village, complete with a private airport capable of landing the supersonic Concorde jet. He regularly chartered the Concorde from Paris to fly in luxury goods, designer clothes, and champagne. His wardrobe included custom-made leopard skin hats and tailored suits from Europe's finest designers. Mobutu's family and close circle shared in this opulence. His wife, Bobby Ladawa, and their children lived in palaces in Switzerland, France, and the Côte d'Azur. The Mobutu clan owned mansions in Brussels and Paris, fleets of Mercedes-Benz limousines, and sprawling estates across Europe. The extravagance was grotesque compared to the plight of ordinary Zaireans, who endured crumbling infrastructure, unpaid salaries, and rampant poverty. The consequences of Mobutu's corruption were catastrophic. Zaire, once seen as a potential economic powerhouse, descended into ruin. Hospitals lacked medicine, schools closed, and public servants went months without pay. Roads, power plants, and factories fell into disrepair. By the 1990s, the economy was in freefall, with inflation soaring and the currency practically worthless. Corruption became so normalized that even the most basic government services required bribes. Zaire was reduced to a beggar nation, dependent on foreign loans and aid, much of which continued to be stolen. Despite this devastation, Mobutu remained a darling of the West for much of his rule. During the Cold War, the United States, Belgium, and France saw him as a crucial ally against communism in Central Africa. In exchange for his staunch anti-Soviet stance, Mobutu received billions in military and economic aid, which he routinely diverted for personal use. Western leaders largely ignored his corruption and repression, seeing him as a bulwark of stability. This geopolitical protection allowed him to rule unchecked for over 3 decades. By the early 1990s, however, Mobutu's empire began to crumble. The Cold War ended, Western support waned, and internal opposition grew. As rebel forces led by Laurent Désiré Kabila advanced in 1997, Mobutu fled the country with much of his remaining fortune. He died in exile in Morocco later that year. Mobutu's corruption was not just about stolen money, it was about systemic decay. He turned theft into the foundation of governance, making corruption the organizing principle of society. His rule crippled one of Africa's most resource-rich countries, leaving behind poverty, instability, and institutions hollowed out by decades of plunder. Even decades after his death, the Democratic Republic of Congo continues to grapple with the legacy of Mobutu's kleptocracy. Mobutu Sese Seko was not simply a corrupt leader, he was corruption incarnate. His rule remains the gold standard of kleptocracy, a cautionary tale of how absolute power and greed can transform a nation's promise into despair. His theft was so vast, his system so pervasive, that it reshaped an entire country's destiny, a tragic legacy that still lingers over the Congo today. Thanks for watching, and see you on our next video.